Happy Monday, everyone. So I know that there are a lot of people who want Infamous 1 and 2 to come to PC, and hey, I'm one of them. But what if I told you it's already on PC? It's not an official release per se, but it's definitely accessible, and it can turn the game from looking like this natively to this, with pretty minimal changes. This is due to a PS3 emulator called RPCS3, and before we delve any further into this video, I just want to say that while emulation is not illegal, piracy is, and I will not be showing you how to obtain a copy of the game, but I will have links in the description to help you set up RPCS3 and give you some tips on how to get the game running at its best. And I'm gonna let you know about any of the issues you may run into. First, let's take a look at the tools we're using, the first of which is RPCS3. Thanks to the wonders of emulation, we can get Infamous running, but we run into an issue off the bat, which is the performance isn't the best. But by changing just a few settings in the emulator, we can get it running at a smooth 60 nearly all of the time. First, we want to change the Zcull accuracy to relaxed. Keep the resolution scaling to default. Do not upscale the resolution in the emulator, as it will cause the characters' faces to look all warped. Turn on asynchronous texture streaming, and turn on multithreaded RSX. Last two steps are to set the sleep timer accuracy to as host, and finally, disable Zcull occlusion queries. These settings will have the game looking pretty good, but we can go further through the use of a third-party software that you can get on Steam called Lossless scaling. Lossless scaling is a tool that can both implement upscaling and frame generation in practically any application, including RPCS3, which can bring our frame rate from the 50s to the 150s in ideal circumstances. In our case, we probably just want a smooth 60 FPS and have the game scale to our monitor, which for you is probably 1080p, though this does work with 4K monitors too. The footage you are seeing has lossless scaling frame generation set to adaptive frame generation and auto scaling, which means the frame generation is only being turned on when we drop below 60 FPS, and the resolution is automatically scaling to 4K, which is my monitor's resolution. I have these settings on because ideally you don't want any fake frames, but with how poorly the first Infamous runs even on its native hardware, it's nice to have a safety cushion. There is a slight catch with this though, and that is that despite everything thus far being free, you do have to pay for lossless scaling. It's about $9 Canadian, which I don't think is that much considering this application can improve the frame rates of a ton of classics, like many FromSoft games, which have their limited frame rates of 60 FPS. This also means that some of you with more luxurious monitors and setups can be playing Infamous at over 120 FPS, and let me tell you, it's another world. So I think with these additions, we're close to seeing what a PC port of Infamous would look like. But if you want to take it a step further, you can introduce another free product like ReShade. Now, before we get into this, I want to mention that I actually dislike ReShade quite a lot because it furthers a problem I have with remasters and remakes, which is changing artistic intent. I think playing a game like Infamous with higher resolution and higher frame rates is fine. I could almost guarantee that the devs would have loved to make their first game at 4K 60 if that was a feasible option, but it wasn't. When it comes to ReShade, however, we can add more bloom, different color corrections, and depth of field that while you could argue are things devs would have added if they could, I think it runs further into changing what the game is meant to be artistically. The settings I've shown you thus far are ideal for me because they don't compromise the original game. It simply makes it playable on better hardware, and prevents some of the performance issues that nearly everyone would agree the game actively suffers from. ReShade, however, changes the art fundamentally, so I actually won't be giving you any settings to try because I think they all look pretty bad, but I know it's something people like playing around with, and if you do like tinkering with color balancing and other post-processing effects, then I just want to let you know that this is an option here for you and it does work. Now, let's talk about some of the downsides with playing a game like this, because so far, I'm sure I've presented the game as being objectively better on PC in nearly every way. The first issue is that you will not have a perfectly smooth game experience. Infamous is a rough game at times on native hardware, so expect some frame drops here and there, and expect some glitches too. I don't think these were a big deal, but it's something to keep in mind. Also, you might notice that the fire effects look a little strange, and this extends to the thrusters as well. This is because the refracting effect that is supposed to distort the image a little bit doesn't work properly, leading to gameplay that looks like this and images getting distorted a lot. Fortunately, you can install a pre-bundled patch that removes these effects. This does mean that the effects look a bit more plain, but it's worth it in the long run. There also used to be a glitch where killing the giant conduits in the historic district would result in the game crashing. However, by changing the float accuracy setting from earlier, it now no longer happens. We also get some graphical errors that I didn't remember seeing in the original, but again, it's a small price to pay for the improvements here. I also want to mention that the lightning strike, which relies on the PlayStation 6-axis controls, don't work here unless using a PS4 or PS5 controller. Personally, for as much as I am a Sony fanboy, I prefer the Xbox One controllers, and in my experience, the lightning strike was still an invaluable ability throughout the game. Now, while we're here, I gotta get a caveat out of the way. Before any of you comment about it, I know I absolutely suck at these games, but in spite of playing worse than a 5-year-old, I love the first Infamous. It's got killer gameplay, a really unique and engaging story, and if you haven't played it in a while, then I highly recommend you do, because it holds up shockingly well. And me sucking at the game isn't gonna change that. I want to take a moment to show some comparisons between the game as it runs natively versus how it runs on this emulator, and I have yet another caveat to all of this, which is that I have a pretty good computer. I'll have my specs on screen now as well as listed below, but my point is that your mileage with all of this will vary. Infamous 1 was playable basically last year, and at that time I had a 3070 Ti, but the performance improvements made in this past year alone are incredible. It's also mostly free to try, aside from the lossless scaling part, so I think it's worth trying this out to see what it's like for you. I also want to say thank you for allowing me to afford such a great computer. The support on this channel and my main channel has been amazing. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge that you can stream this game through the use of PlayStation Now on modern hardware, but despite having really solid internet, I still find the game streaming to be incredibly hit or miss. And that goes doubly so when I live with my wife, who, if she were to start watching Netflix or YouTube while I'm playing, would hurt my connection and the quality of gameplay. I also found the input delay is a lot to get used to. I know some people are able to have a good time with it, and I recommend using the free trial they offer new users to see if it's right for you, but for me, it's the last resort always. Finally, I know that we have spoken pretty broadly here, but to end off the video, I want to take a look at a few specific scenes that perform much better here to show you how much of an improvement playing on an emulator can be. The PS3 footage is from a PS3 Slim that I've owned for a while, so granted, it could just be that the console's old, but I highly doubt many of you are playing this game on a fresh out-of-the-box PS3. Let's take a look at the opening where we can see some heavy slowdown during Cole's electrocution animation on the bridge, compared to the smoothness of the emulator. We can then look at moments like Alden's prison break, one of the most intense graphical moments in the game because it takes place in the Warren, an already demanding area, and gives us unlimited electricity, so we can go nuts with powers too. On PS3, it's a borderline slideshow, but on the emulator, it is buttery smooth. I don't think frame rates are everything, but when the FPS is dropping this low, it starts to impact gameplay severely. I would also be remiss to point out the one flaw with lossless scaling, however, which is how it affects the cutscenes. In gameplay, because there is a higher focus requirement and because there is so much going on at once, when the frame generation picks it up, it's not too noticeable, but it is very noticeable during the comic cutscenes. The image gets distorted when characters move, and while I don't think it's a big deal, it certainly takes away from some of the charm. So, there you have it. That's how you can play the first Infamous on PC. I know it's not exactly ideal, and I'd still love for Sucker Punch to just port the game to PC already, but this is a pretty good alternative if you ask me, and when I replay the game, this is the way I do it going forward. Now, I know a lot of you want to know if you can do the same for Infamous 2 and Second Son. And well, fortunately, Infamous 2 is playable, but Second Son isn't. The PS4 emulator just isn't where it needs to be right now, and while the community around Shad PS4 have made some insane strides when it comes to getting games like Bloodborne running well, Infamous Second Son is flat out unplayable. This video, however, will stick purely to Infamous 1 because I want to make sure that I could get through the whole game before saying that it was playable on PC. According to the RPCS3 compatibility website, Infamous 1 is labeled as in-game, which means it either can't be finished, has serious glitches, or has insufficient performance. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm convinced it's now at a point where it's playable. If you guys want to see how to get Infamous 2 running on PC as well, then let me know and I will get that video to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your week.